Hello and welcome to the House College Sports Show. I'm Joe. With me is Kyle, as always. Here to talk about college football conference championship recap, college football playoff teams, all that good stuff. Some coaching changes as well. That's actually where we're going to start. But first of all, Kyle, how you doing?
I'm good. Got just a little bit to talk about this week. Then we'll hit the bowl games next week, so kind of an easy week here.
Yep, keeping it short and simple, but we do have some of these coaching changes to talk about. We'll start with the big name first. We have Deion Sanders to Colorado. He was considering a couple jobs, ended up taking Colorado jobs, and a lot of the rumors are Colorado was willing to accept some of Deion's demands in terms of, well, first of all, money, obviously. It is a job. Having his son come in and immediately start a quarterback, I think he wants a better NIL collective going forward. And Colorado basically said, well, you know what? We haven't been relevant in a while. We went to the Pac-12 championship game that one year, like 4 or 5 years ago. But other than that, we'll accept anything you can give us. And he's now the coach of Colorado.
Yeah, it's a little reminiscent for me of Lane Kiffin coming to Ole Miss because that was a lot of the same kind of things. You know, we had gone through those rough years with Matt Luke. We're kind of irrelevant. We tasted the relevance there for a while with Hugh Freeze, and we said, well, let's roll the dice. We brought Lane Kiffin in. The salary I don't think was as high, but it was a lot of the same kind of stuff where, you know, here are the expectations. This is what I need from you guys. And Ole Miss delivered, and, you know, as you see, that's turned into a good thing there. So Colorado could be looking in the same direction. Me personally, I thought UC would be a little better fit. I thought that might be a spot that he might want to go with them going to the Big 12 and rising there. But, you know, Colorado also a fine place there. I mean, like you said, they most recently went to the 5 years or whatever, and it's a winnable conference. There's a lot more. It's a lot more competitive conference now too. It's a lot more fun there, but it's a big uphill battle. I don't know. Like you said, you hit the portal hard. You bring your kids with you, and you got a chance to turn this thing around year one. But I sent it to you. What did you think about that opening meeting with the players, the current Colorado players, where he basically tells them all that you need to hit the portal?
At least he was honest. That's all I got to say. Like, he knows he's bringing, I don't know if you saw this, but like he has 200 4 or 5-star recruits or former 4 or 5-star recruits who have reached out to him wanting to come to Colorado. So what he did at Jackson State is just going to be magnified in Colorado. So I do appreciate that he was honest, but wow, could you have said it in a better way? Because there's going to be some guys in that room that you do end up keeping, and you kind of, I don't know. But it does seem like after a bad season, which ones would you keep? I mean, the vast majority of them are going to be gone, so I do appreciate him not lying to them because there are a lot of coaches who would straight up lie and just try to keep as many as possible, or have guys have to transfer out late, like Jim Harbaugh has kind of done a couple times with this Iowa quarterback now, Cade McNamara, who should have lost the job before the season but did not, and then he had to transfer after losing a year of eligibility. So here we are. So I appreciate the honesty. What about you?
I mean, I agree. The honesty is nice. It's good to let them know. I thought there's a better way to say it. I thought it was a little presumptuous, just assuming that you're gonna you got everybody spoken for. We don't need your players. You're good. A little cocky. I don't know. I didn't like the manner and the way that it was delivered, but the sentiment I guess I do agree with. Let them know up front. I guess you better win right away, though. I mean, what a way to come in. I don't know.
It is, and I do think based on who they get coming, they obviously have Travis Hunter coming, the number 1 recruit from last year's class coming in.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, So he's coming in.
I thought he went there for moral reasons and everything. He turned down all the money, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
but he's going to be there. They got all these other guys coming. There's a chance that could be competitive in the Pac-12 even next year. It would be crazy to think they'd win the Pac-12 with everything USC has going on and some of the other schools, but Deion's already getting a really good coaching staff in place, which is something that we talked about was very necessary. He has Mike Zimmer coming in as defensive coordinator. He was former head coach, defensive coordinator in the NFL. They're going to bring it. I do think they're going to be a tough team next year, and his son was a very highly rated quarterback too. Not like highly rated, but he's good enough to play at Colorado, so they're going to be a good team next year. All right, so Deion takes the Colorado job. That'll make the Pac-12 a little bit more interesting. Cincinnati had a baffling hire that seems like it's not very good on a couple different levels. They hire Scott Satterfield from Louisville to take their job. What this does is, they're playing in the bowl game against Louisville on December 17th, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. That makes that weird, especially because of Fenway. They're both going to be on the same sideline, both Cincinnati and Louisville, in a rivalry game for the Keg and Nails with the school that took one of their other team's coaches. That's fun. But also, Louisville did not like Scott Satterfield. They sat him down at one point this season and basically gave him an ultimatum of win more games or you're gone. They refused to give him a contract extension after this season, apparently, is kind of the rumors going around. And they're happy that UC paid the buyout on that contract and got him to be the coach. I thought there was plenty of different better options. The reasoning their AD gave was he had a program that moved from FCS to FBS that'll be similar, not in talent level, but similar move in terms of moving from AAC to Big 12. So that's why they did it. I'm not sure I agree with the reasoning though.
Yeah, I thought it's a fine hire, I guess is the way I would say it. You saw what he did. He built the App State program. Credit there, but it's been a while, and you don't know if he can still do that anymore. It kind of showed at Louisville that he hasn't been able to. I mean, it's just kind of been a stagnant 6-6 level program. And then, like you said, Louisville fans kind of didn't want to retain him anymore. I mean, his seat was getting warm to hot. The good thing, I guess, is he's shown he can recruit. He's still recruiting at a high level despite not a lot of on-field success. So that's kind of a positive. Maybe bring some of those recruits with them. And when you look at it, now UC's going to the Big 12. Basically, that's on the same level with the ACC where Louisville is. So you kind of expect him to be able to recruit just as well to UC as he did to Louisville. They're very similar programs in that respect. So maybe you can, you see some positives there. He's got Power 5 experience, but I agree with you. It's kind of a lackluster hire overall, in my opinion. Just doesn't really move the needle too terribly much. It's fun that he steals them from Louisville and everything, but we'll see where it goes. If you told me it worked out and it was good, that's fine. I mean, I don't think it's going to be any kind of Luke Fickell situation or anything, but I could see it working out overall, just staying competitive, staying in that 8-9 win area, but could also seen it dip just 5-7, 6-6, like he's been at Louisville. So
yeah, the Louisville fans seemingly just haven't liked the recruiting to start at Louisville because it did start pretty slow for him, and B, some of the play on the field wasn't as good as they hoped. I mean, they went 7-5 this year, and that's about where I guess they were projected in the end, but they wanted a little bit more, and historically, Louisville has a pretty good athletics program. They're usually pretty good in football, basketball, and baseball, so they're one of the athletic programs that makes money. But right now, they're struggling pretty hard in a couple different sports. But I'll say that I think he can do okay, but they need to get the NIL money working for Cincinnati in a big way. A lot of the recruits, a lot of people are presuming they signed for the NIL money, and I don't think Cincinnati is set up as well as Louisville right now for that. But we'll see what happens. I think he could be successful as well. It's just there was rumors that there was actually bigger coaches interested because of the opportunity, because of the past success Cincinnati's had over the last 20 years with head coaches, minus Tommy Tuberville, really. And they just it's okay. It might work out, but it's not a good sign when the school that you're taking him from is like, oh, cool, yeah, that's fine, perfect for us. We can go get someone better. And they did, Kyle.
Yeah.
Jeff Brom from Purdue goes back to his alma mater in Louisville. Love this hire. He's been great at Purdue. Limited resources. Yes, it's Big Ten West, but limited resources comparatively to other Big Ten teams. Made the Big Ten championship this year. From Louisville, he'll be able to recruit. He's been good in the Midwest area, which is obviously where Louisville is too. So I think they knocked out of the park, and Louisville is just running around like bandits right now after getting rid of a coach they didn't really want and getting one that they really did want for a couple of years.
Well, yeah. And they don't even have to pay his buyout. I mean, UC did him a favor. And I've seen for years Louisville fans wanting the Purdue Brom coming down. They wanted him, 4 years ago or whatever it was. They end up getting Satterfield. But I think, more continued success from Brom. And now the fans clamoring louder and louder for him. And it finally happened. So I'm happy for him. Good for him. He's kept that Purdue program relevant for years now. And like you said, he's just moving a couple hours south. He's still in the same recruiting grounds. He's very familiar with the area. Louisville kind of opens you up to that, the Southern pipeline as well, if he wants to tap into that a little bit. I think he's going to do well in the ACC. I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. Arguably, you kind of move to easier territory there. Yes, the Big Ten West super cake this year, and it's typically that's been the case for the last maybe year or so, but that wasn't always the case while Brown was there. And you still have to play, the Big Ten East teams. Whereas in the ACC, I mean, we saw this year there's really only two contenders. Florida State, actually, I keep forgetting to give credit to them. They've been up and up, but outside of that, there's really not a lot you got to worry about. And it's not like these are top of the program like football teams that they're going after, like Ohio State, Michigan. It's Clemson that's kind of fallen a bit, and then it's UNC who very beatable as well. So I think he's setting up nicely there in the ACC.
Yeah, I had a friend who's a fan of Louisville ask me today, like, what's the ceiling here? And I was like, well, I mean, Clemson is still the top dog there, even with the down seasons. I mean, 10-win seasons the last 2 years is still whatever. They're not going to beat them. But I feel like as a program, you could be the third or fourth best program in the ACC under Jeff Brom. Maybe some years that means you win the ACC. Maybe some years you finish second. Maybe some years fifth. It's hard to be consistently like in the middle there, but third or fourth, I think they could be right behind Clemson, Florida State, maybe North Carolina, since they've invested a lot in that football program. And everyone else has just been kind of like all these sleeping giants, like Miami. Everyone's like they'll come back. They haven't come back. So right now with Louisville, if they get that money right, like I've been talking about with how good they are as a total sports school, one of the few schools that make money on all three major sports, then they could turn this into, like, I don't want to say like a dynasty, but they could make it into a really solid program in the ACC, maybe right behind Clemson and maybe Florida State. All right, let's go to a recap of all the title games, Kyle. There was the biggest one was on Friday, so we'll just start there. It was Utah and USC, and this was big because of the college football playoff race and USC having the 4 spot. And USC started off hot. Caleb Williams was playing pretty well. But then that USC defense really just looked like they all honestly gave up. And Utah wins 47-24. Wasn't a really good showing in that second half. Caleb Williams was a little bit banged up in this game, and that really, I think, hurt them as well. But it wouldn't have changed. Even if he was healthy, I don't think it changes the fact that defense played so bad.
I mean, good God, they gave up how many touchdowns in the fourth quarter? It really just, later in the game, like you said, they come out to a 17-3 start, and then it just dies. And you've been waiting on it all year. It finally happened. USC's defense did catch up with them, and like you said, that defense isn't the one that makes the playoffs. Typically, defense that bad. I mentioned that I didn't think Cam Rising would be able to rise to the challenge like he did in the first matchup, and boy, was I wrong. He kept the offense moving all night. He didn't have quite as big of a game as he did, last time, but he didn't really need to with as big as the running game was opening up for him against that bad USC run defense. But he was efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. 3 touchdowns. He does a good job there. And then defensively, Utah puts the clamps down in the second half. I mean, really, the second or the last 3 quarters when you think about it, because there really just wasn't a lot going on at all after those opening touchdowns. So, yeah, Utah really just stomped them. I mean, that was a beating.
Yeah, I didn't imagine that was going to happen. I just thought it'd be more of a shootout like the first time the game happened. But yeah, credit to Utah for getting that second straight Pac-12 championship. They're going to build a statue of Cam Rising and Kyle Whittingham in Columbus, Ohio, because that resulted in Ohio State getting in the playoff, which we'll talk about coming up here. But it's really good. We talked about him being one of the most underrated coaches in the sport, and I think getting into the spotlight these last 2 years has been really good for Kyle Whittingham. All right, the other 2 games on Friday, just really quickly, Buffalo gets bowl eligibility. They win 23-22. They scored a late touchdown to get the win and come back. We did skip this pick, and that was on me because we had so much to do anyway, and it ended up working out.
You said we were just doing the championship games anyway. So
yeah,
that's no big deal.
Yeah, true. And then the other one, CUSA, UTSA beats North Texas 48-27. That offense has been good under Jeff Traylor. Frank Harris has been a star, 341 yards, 4 touchdowns. Zachary Franklin, 10 receptions, 144 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's an NFL draft prospect to watch out for, maybe in the mid-rounds, late rounds. But this is the second straight CUSA championship for the Roadrunners. They are obviously based in San Antonio, so they're doing a parade to celebrate their CUSA championship on the Riverwalk of San Antonio, which is the coolest thing I've ever heard of. But really good game for them, and honestly, this program is set to even grow even more. They're moving into the AAC in a couple of years, I think next year actually, so they're ready to go. All right, we'll keep it moving.
I got nothing to add to those. Sorry, I didn't know you were waiting on me.
Good. We'll keep it moving to Saturday, and we'll start it off with some of the early games. Kansas State beats TCU in overtime, 31-28. This was a game where Max Duggan was getting beat up, but he just kept on coming back. He didn't really have the most efficient game, but he used his legs, used his arms. 251 yards, 1 touchdown. In the end, couldn't get anything going in overtime. Kansas State gets the field goal. Kansas State wins the Big 12 championship. But in the end, TCU still makes the playoff, which we both talked about is something they deserved.
Yeah, and that's something, again, we'll get to later. But this game was so exciting. I mean, it was a fun one to watch. It had a little bit of everything. Max Duggan looked like a Heisman. I mean, there's a reason that he's in the Heisman contender now. You know, he looked like a Heisman in this. And the one thing that pissed me off, I mean, I talked to you about it too. How do you take the ball out of your Heisman contender's hands in overtime when you need some kind of score? And, you know, he just marched your team all the way down the field, put the team on his back. I mean, what was it? He ran for like a record on that drive, a record number of yards on the single drive by a quarterback or something like that. And then you take the ball out of his hands on, you know, basically on the goal line there at the very end. I thought that was just an awful call by TCU, and was, you know, costing the game, rightfully so. I mean, I would have given it to Max Duggan one more time, whether that's him throwing or scrambling or whatever it is. I definitely would have had it in his hands instead of just forcing it up the middle with the running back. But live and learn, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something they will be talking about, hopefully, as they head forward to play Michigan in the first round of the playoff. Sonny Dykes had a great year, going to be a finalist for the Coach of the Year award and all that. I think he won the Big 12 Coach of the Year award today, so definitely deserved, but that was an interesting situation there. The other noon game, Toledo beats Ohio 17-7. There was tons of jokes about Ohio teams who were actually playing in the championship on championship Saturday, and Toledo 8-5. Jason Candle's done a great job with Toledo so far, and MAC champions again. That's all I got, Kyle.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. I did get to watch that a little bit. It just wasn't moving the needle too much, from being totally honest. It wasn't a lot of action, I guess. So coming from the action, that's a little surprising. But yeah, I mean, it was a fine game. It just, you kept expecting Ohio to come back and like make that final push, and it just never ended up happening. Toledo's defense held strong all the way through the second half, and you know, that's why they got the win there.
That's all we got to say about that one. We'll move on to the afternoon games, or we'll try to go in order for the afternoon games here. SEC, Georgia beats LSU 50-30. Not even a contest, really. It was, I mean, Garrett Nussmeier got in the second half, and also because Jaden Daniels was banged up and, I mean, just wasn't himself. And Georgia showed why they're the top-ranked team in the country. That's pretty much all you need to know about that one.
Yeah, you and I didn't think this was a chance that LSU would win. I thought that punt return, it was a punt return, right? I thought that was fun.
Oh,
I think it was
no, it was a blocked field goal.
Blocked field goal. That's what it was. I kept seeing that highlight. Of course, I forget which it was, but I kept seeing that highlight all day on Saturday. I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. And it felt a little better because it was happening to LSU too, you know. So. But yeah, that's pretty much what we expected. Maybe not 50 points, but we did expect Georgia to comfortably win that game.
Oh yeah. They're the number one seed for sure, and they earned that, and maybe earned a chance at something we'll talk about later, playing Ohio State, which is maybe right or not right, but that's how it goes. The AAC championship, Tulane beats UCF 45-28. Tulane had this one at home. Michael Pratt played well. Ty J. Spears played well. We talked about them last week in their win over Cincinnati. UCF had a weird situation. John Rice Plumlee had a hamstring injury, so he wasn't totally able to run. And kind of still got pulled for a freshman quarterback as well. But Mikey Keene, who had been the guy they were kind of switching in there for him, was the starter last year. He said he wasn't going to play in this game because he wanted to preserve a redshirt year, and now he's transferring out. So there was some quarterback issues because of that. In my opinion, go get Mikey Keene. I think he should have won the job out of camp over John Rice Plumlee. Personally, I just thought you stick with the guy who got you there last year, even with the new coach. Yeah, go transfer. Go save your redshirt year. If they didn't believe in you enough to start you at the start of the year, go transfer. But I would have liked to see John Rice Plumlee start and kind of go further in this game, even with the hamstring injury, Kyle.
I thought JRP won that fair and square. I mean, I'm sorry, Mikey Keene, you didn't get it, but like JRP had a great season. It's not like he really cost him many games. I thought later in the season it was weird with the shifting. Now we understand why that was happening. There were maybe rumors floating around that he was going to transfer. Maybe he's just unhappy. Gus saw that, so he wanted to get him in there. And ultimately, obviously, that didn't end up working out in the end. But yeah, I agree. I would have maybe had him in there a little more. I mean, the game was within reach. But end of the day, it's just a little too much from Tulane. And you and I been following them a little bit closer now. And I think, I don't know why I went against them before. I mean, this is a very well-balanced team. And they can hit you a lot of different ways on offense. And as we can see, it's hard to stop. So they're going to be the New Year's Six team, and that's going to be a fun one to watch as well. I'm trying to remember. They get USC.
They get USC, and the line
Yeah.
is only about 1.5 for USC in favor of USC, and
Well,
I guess that,
think of how much Tajay Spears is going to run on them.
yeah, I think that's the reason.
I
That's
mean,
the reason why, and I think we're
whew.
expecting some opt outs from USC too. So the Vegas doesn't want to give anyone an early like, hey,
True.
Tulane players, they're going to play because this is the biggest game of their lives.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if I like that line still, but I guess I understand why it's there. But I might still take USC honestly.
Yeah.
All right, the Mountain West Championship, Fresno State 28-16 over Boise State on the road in this one because that's how they do it in the Mountain West. Jay Kaner goes out with the conference championship. Jordan Mims had a solid day. Talked a lot about Fresno State this year. I know you like Jay Kaner. I took them over 8 wins. They almost got that this regular season. They did not get it, but they get the conference championship. They've redeemed themselves. It got me a push on my bet. So good for Fresno State.
I'm glad they got there. It was a tough start to the season, like we said, a really, really rough start, actually. They had some injuries, and, Jay Kaner doesn't go out in a flaming ball of fire or whatever, but, he gets the win. It wasn't a huge game or anything, but it's a comfortable win, and good for them. They get a little championship, 9-4 season, chance to get to 10. Just kind of righting the ship after a really rough start.
Yeah, I think that that loss to UConn was just like at the time we were like, what the heck is going on here? Who would have thought they lost to a
Yeah.
bowl eligible team, even though they probably should have still won. All right, we'll move on to the evening games, Kyle. We had Michigan routing Purdue. It was kind of close in the first half, and then Michigan just blew away Purdue. Aiden O'Connell had 2 interceptions for Purdue that kind of didn't help things. But Michigan just did what they always do. They run the ball well, and Donovan Edwards had 25 carries for 185 yards and 1 touchdown. I've been mentioning just how he is more talented than Blake Corum, and people don't like that because Blake Corum has better stats this year. But Donovan Edwards is a 5-star recruit, and he's reeling off these huge runs in these big games. And, I just don't think it's as big of a loss to lose Blake Corum when you have a guy like Donovan Edwards behind him, and people don't like that I said that, but he's very talented, and with Blake Corum out the rest of the way, they're going to ride him and ride that offensive line because it's doing wonders.
Yeah, and honestly, you don't even really need Blake Corum at this point. I mean, he can probably just ride Donovan Edwards all the way through. I mean, he's proven he can pick up the slack and then some. And like you said, he might be the better option there in the backfield. Purdue kept it close. Good job. Just they came out of the second half kind of weak. The interception hurts them, and then Michigan takes advantage and just controls the game at the end. And that went the way we expected. I don't think any of us expected Purdue to win. They made it a decent battle, which I thought was good. But yeah, no, Michigan showing why they're number 2.
Yep, absolutely solidified that spot. The last game we're going to recap, Clemson beats North Carolina 39-10. North Carolina's defense is bad. We mentioned that all year. They faded down the stretch too, which is just not good. But Clemson, the big story from this one, I guess, is that Clemson ended up benching DJ Uiagalelei. Started the year off not very good. Then he had some promising games where you're like, all right, he turned a corner maybe against, I think, Syracuse, maybe Florida State. I don't remember which games exactly he looked like that. But then he faded again. The plan was to play 2 quarterbacks, but Cade Klubnik came in and did not look back. 20 of 24 passing, 279 yards, and 1 touchdown. And that is the story from the game because now everyone's going to ask if they had made this change sooner, would Clemson be in the playoff? Would they only have 1 loss? All that stuff.
And no. Like, look at, I mean, Cade Klubnik, we watched him all year. He did not make good plays. He comes in against Notre Dame when they really need a spark. And yes, that's a really tough spot for a freshman to jump in on and whatnot. But he made an awful decision. And he turns it over and the game's out of reach. He wasn't like he was wowing. I mean, he had little flashes. He got to be put in the games because DJ was having a bad game. And it's not like he was wowing anybody. It's not like he was like doing really well. Yes, he had a great game this one. Like you said, though, that UNC's defense has been spiraling all year towards the end of the season. So it's nice to see. It's something you can build on for next year. Tip your cap to him. That was a good game. He beat the hell out of them. But no, I don't think they're the playoff team if they put him in instead of DJ. But I have a point of contention here. I don't think that is the story of the game. I don't think at all. I think the story of the game is Hunter Johnson making the full round trip and getting in there and going 5 for 5. I love that. He starts at Clemson. I watched him at Northwestern. I thought we were going to get a big they might not know, anyone that listens. I'm a Northwestern fan for whatever reason. Been since I was a kid. It's terrible to watch. It's whatever. But so, Hunter Johnson transfers in. I'm expecting big things. He does absolutely nothing. And then I find out in the offseason he's transferring back to Clemson. I was like, okay. And then here he gets his 5 throws and Kind of like a little senior send off. I like it. That's the big story.
Oh
for me.
wow, yeah, that's personalized news right there, buddy. But yeah, that is a cool way to end his career. At least if you're not going to play at a high level, at least go Clemson, get 5 more completions. That's nice. But
6 on
yeah,
the
I think I'm with you though. I've said the whole year that there is a problem with this offense, not necessarily the quarterback position. DJ, could he have played better? Yes, but I think the offensive scheme really needs some upgrades. This is like one of the jobs we're talking about is like needs to be improved. So like Texas A&M needs a new offensive coordinator. Clemson needs a new offensive coordinator. Just in the same way that Lincoln Riley needs maybe a new defensive coordinator after how they played and at USC. So I think it's more out of their hands. But Clemson's still a very good team. That defense kind of carried them a lot this year. Will Shipley carried them a lot this year. They win the ACC. It's another down, quote unquote, down year for them, and they're rolling into the Orange Bowl. So that's just shows you maybe expectations maybe got a little bit high with that Deshaun Watson run there at Clemson, but they're still and Trevor Lawrence, but they're still a really good program, and they're one offensive coordinator away from being back in the playoff, in my opinion. All right, so that brought us down to, Kyle, we had our top 4 teams. We have Georgia, then Michigan, then TCU, and then Ohio State. What do you think about the top 4?
Man, I love it. You and I were talking, in our group chats and everything about what this might be. And there's a lot of Alabama fear, I think. There's a huge narrative being pushed Saturday night on Twitter and everything. And then, Coach Saban even was pushing it a little bit, and everybody trying to get Bama in there and push them in, blah, blah, blah. And, man, I was going to be very upset if they left TCU out. That was first and foremost number one, because I don't believe you can penalize a team for having to play that extra championship game and then reward a team that didn't make their championship game for sitting on the bench that weekend. I just think that sets a terrible precedent, and I hate that. And that's why I've always kind of hated this 4-team playoff, because it penalizes teams for making the championship, potentially. So I'm very glad they kept TCU in there. They keep them at 3-2. I love that as well, especially the way that game ended. I mean, it was so close, literally less than a yard in that game. And then I personally like the fact that I'm wearing Ohio State jersey here, but I like the fact that they put Ohio State in over Alabama. Just like you said, and you've mentioned it week after week, all the optics point Ohio State over Alabama. Alabama has the 2 losses. Yes, one's to a top 10 team, but Ohio State's 1 loss is to the number 2 team, the champion. I mean, and Alabama's is to the runner-up in the SEC and then the runner-up in the East. And LSU's dropped now to 17. I mean, I know they were close losses. I know one was on the road, but there was also the one they lost, or they won some games just by the hair of their teeth as well. So you can't say have one without the other. I definitely think Ohio State is more deserving. 1-loss team. The blueprint was basically there. At the end of Saturday. I mean, you had 4 teams, 2 undefeated, 2 1-loss, and then you had a handful of 2-loss teams. It would have been really hard, I think, to justify putting Alabama in over Ohio State.
Do I have your permission to go on a rant real quick?
I just did, so I think you should.
I thought it was pathetic that Nick Saban was going on national shows and talking about point spreads being the reason and how the best teams have to get in, when he has previously said, I don't care about point spreads. That means nothing to me. All this stuff, we don't talk about that. That's just rat poison. With specifically talking about point spreads, then he changes it just to get himself in. I get every coach has to push their team and try to get in the playoff, but, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think that the committee is going to really listen to that stuff. Maybe they do, but I don't think they will. 2, I heard a lot of Alabama fans, even if non-Alabama fans too, were like, oh, well, they're 2 losses. We're really close. They lost by 4 total points. This is the SEC. I think the SEC is a tougher conference than the Big 12 top to bottom, or even the Big 10 top to bottom. And I lost my mind. I was just like, they have beaten no one. You can't. If you have 2 losses, you have to objectively prove you are better than someone who, A, went to their conference championship game, and B, was undefeated heading into the conference championships. TCU has a better strength of record. They're like number 3 in the country after the Big 12 championship. TCU has beat Texas, common opponent. They beat them by 7. Alabama beat them by 1. Arguably, Alabama should have lost the game.
I was to say, with a big asterisk there.
Second best win. What, TCU? Who did TCU beat? TCU beat someone who was way better than
they beat Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas State. So they beat Kansas State, who's a top 10 team. Alabama's next best win is Mississippi State, Ole Miss.
Oh wait, actually, yeah, it's Mississippi State, because we lost to them, so it's Mississippi State.
Who's barely ranked. So if this was a typical SEC year where they had racked up all these wins, maybe you do. But if you're talking about who you've lost to and how close the losses are, you've already lost the argument, in my opinion. This college football has always been a sport about who you beat, pulling off that upset, all this stuff. It drove me batty when people said that, and I'm not saying Ohio State deserves to be in the playoff that much, but if you're talking about 4 teams have to get in, then yes, they are the 4th team. That's how it works. Or 3rd team if you like them over TCU. I don't really care at that point as long as they're both in. But that drove me up a wall. I'm with you. They got the 4 right teams in. If you want to use gambling spreads as a reason why they should not be in, then why do we even play the games? Why?
You are grasping at straws.
Yes, I do not like that. So they got the 4 right teams in. Guess what? And Kyle, I will say this too. They did avoid a Ohio State-Michigan matchup, I think, in the end, and the playoff.
Yeah, that was purposeful, and that's fine.
Yeah, and guess what? If Ohio State and Michigan win both their games, oh my God, Twitter's going to melt down. The world's going to melt down. It's going to be great.
The SEC will die. I'm part of me is cheering for this. I want to see it. I don't want Michigan in there. I got to be honest, but I'd much rather have TCU if I'm being honest. But either way, I really want Ohio State to beat Georgia, and for the first time ever have the SEC fans sitting on their couch watching Big Ten compete. It would be fun.
I think it'd be great. The teams hate each other more than just about any 2 teams you could ever come up with in sports. We've had this weird thing where Michigan's won 2 in a row after Ohio State has dominated for the last 20 years. How weird would it be? How great would it be? And I'm not a Michigan guy either, but how great would it be if Michigan can go, we beat you twice to win the national championship, or conversely, Ohio State's like,
we won when it mattered.
That game in November didn't matter, So it's going to be the greatest thing ever if that happens. It probably isn't. We're gonna get our picks later on. We're gonna do week by week bowl picks, but it would be great if that did happen.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh boy.
This is the most exciting college football playoff I've seen so far. And I think probably the first time that I've been like 100% in on who they picked and how they seeded them and not had any issue like whatsoever with any of it. This probably is the first time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they usually have like at least one little thing that bugs me, so.
There's always just a little bit of something, right? But like this year, it's just like, and it played out that way. The only thing there was the Alabama thing, and the only people that really saw that were cheering for that was the SEC and Alabama. But other than that, everybody else in the world saw it and was like, here are your 4 teams. I mean, this is how you should do it.
I will say, though, I do think in this whole situation, Georgia got kind of screwed. Like, they seeded the teams right, but I think if you gave Georgia the pick of who they would want to play, they'd pick TCU over Ohio State. Yeah. So it kind of sucks. And I do think it'd be really cool I know we only have one more year of this playoff, but they let the number 1 seed pick who they played, and then you get the bulletin board material too. That would be good. Fun. And it'd be Georgia. I mean, I guess it would be Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, but it does stink that USC losing has set up a point where Georgia arguably gets the tougher game out of anyone in the whole playoff outside of Michigan, TCU being 2 and 3. I mean, I think you'd rather have that either if you're Michigan or TCU. So. Just a weird thing I noticed, and something I've heard on some other podcasts of like, this is like, Georgia may have blown out like TCU maybe, but they could still blow out Ohio State because they play similarly to Michigan. They run the ball, they play good defense, but it's less likely that they blow out Ohio State than TCU, which might make the playoff even better this year because we're getting sick of seeing those 1 versus 4 blowouts. I don't know. All right, last thing we got to do, Kyle. Army-Navy, we got to pick it. The last regular season game in college football. Navy's 4-7, Army's 5-6. This one is at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Navy is favored by 2.5 on the road.
Black Knights, baby. I always go with an Army. Every year. I watched Navy win way too much growing up. For whatever reason, I picked Army when I was playing NCAA as a kid. As one of my starter schools, and I've always loved Army because of it. So I'm sticking with the Black Knights.
Ooh, I'm more of an Air Force guy myself, but they're not in this game.
All right, them too. Yeah,
I like the blue uniforms. I like the helmets with the little thing on the side. I like the altitude they have, and I like the playbook they had in NCAA where it's half option, half spread, which was just the coolest thing ever. Anyway, they're not in this game. They already won the what's it called, the Commanders in Chief trophy.
Yeah,
but I'm taking Army too. Army has been a really good program over the last several years. They've had some 10-win seasons. Navy's kind of fallen off over the last several seasons. They're not going to fire their coach. Niumatalolo, got it right. Just had to take a second there. But Jeff Monken's been a good coach for Army. I think their records are similar enough. It could go either way. That's how it usually is in a rivalry game. But I'll take them, especially if you're giving them points. You give Army some motivation to beat Navy when, these two teams, their whole thing is beat Army, beat Navy. So give me Army. All right, any final thoughts, Kyle?
No. We'll get to it next week a little more. But, yeah, for this week, that's all I got.
All right, yeah, we'll keep everyone updated with our picks, like you said, next week on a week-to-week basis with the Bulls. My turn to remind everyone to go subscribe on YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see everyone next week.